Next up is Chris Parker, and he is the director of the Utah Division of Public Utilities, which houses the state's pipeline safety program for, as you just heard, intrastate gas pipelines. He's been the director since January of 2011. Prior to that appointment as director, Chris was counsel for the Utah legislature, serving in various committees and task force, including the Public Utilities and Technology Interim Committee and the Natural Resources, Agriculture, and Environment Interim Committee. Mr. Parker.
Thank you. I didn't do this presentation even though my name's on it. So if it's great, I don't get any credit. If it's bad, I don't get any blame. I apologize. I don't have any jokes like Tom. I'm kind of a charlatan. I haven't been in the pipeline safety business or the digging business or anything like that. I've been in the public lawyering business, which is maybe as dirty but not as hands-on. So as Tom mentioned, the regulation of and the inspection of pipelines in Utah and in the Salt Lake Valley in particular, that's pretty snazzy, Al, it's broken down between PHMSA and the state. Here's some contact information. I assume these presentations will be made available to attendees. Here's some contact information for our pipeline safety section. Our division is primarily charged with regulating rates of public utilities and service quality and those things. The pipeline safety section is unique in that they don't have anything to do with rate regulation. They're strictly the pipeline safety function. And as Tom mentioned, you'll see here a little chart that kind of shows you the liquid pipelines, both inter and intrastate, are governed by PHMSA, and as well as the interstate gas pipelines, with our division having responsibility just for the intrastate gas pipelines. And there's a fair bit of that in the state. I don't think we have numbers broken down by the Salt Lake Valley, but the relevant section in the Utah Code, should you need to review it, is in Title 54, Chapter 13. That's the Natural Gas Pipeline Safety Act, where the provisions are largely located. One of the provisions in that chapter of code gives the commission the power to implement rules to carry out its duties, and those rules largely mirror and in fact incorporate by reference the federal CFR stuff, so that the regulation, whether it be interstate or intrastate for natural gas pipelines, is largely similar, even if it's carried out by different entities. Here's just a list of what's in there. It, as I mentioned, gives rulemaking power as well as inspection and examination responsibilities. And there's some guidelines in code. Particularly, there's penalties in code which have recently been reinstated. I'm not going to bore you with reading the statutory language, even though for 6 years I made a living writing it. I don't really want people to have to read it. It's not exciting. So the commission is largely reactive. So our division is primarily responsible for getting out and doing the inspections, both of records and of facilities. We're going to skip over some of this stuff here. And this is the relevant section for the power of the division to carry out these responsibilities, and it's been given to the commission and essentially delegated to us. Al Zadeh and his staff spend most of the year, reviewing Questar records, inspections, getting out and inspecting the pipelines as well throughout the state, not just in the urban areas. I'm going to save you some time here because Tom covered some of these things. There's a lot of rules in here that you're welcome to use this presentation to guide you to the right places. I will mention just briefly the penalties that are in code. They were stripped out. I can't remember, were they stripped out or stripped back a few years ago? Either way, I can't remember. But 2 years ago, I think it was, we had to put those back in the code. There was an unrelated bill, and it sort of was a casualty to the push and pull and the quickness of the legislative process. But those are back in place now. So an operator can be fined for a violation of $10,000 per instance, and up to, I think it's $500,000 for a series of incidents or conduct. So there's some significant penalties available. Here is a table of contents of the rules that the Commission has adopted, should you need to reference those. Largely, you'll see here on this slide and on others that the Commission has just incorporated the CFR by reference in most places. So while the state has the power to be more stringent with its regulation than the federal code and the federal regulations allow, the state has not really done that yet. And whether that's a question of resources or the desire, I'm not sure which. So here's a summary slide of sort of the regulation. And I'll give you some factual information. The main pipelines that we deal with are Questar Gas, and you can probably guess that they're all over the state. But we also deal, again, Tom mentioned this, that we have municipalities that have distribution systems for natural gas, and we tackle those as well, and then the gathering systems. Al's got some great numbers here that cover the scope of what we're dealing with here. And in fact, I'm going to kind of skip through to a summary slide here of all of the pipeline that we're dealing with. So, of course, I've always been short, and now the screen is too. So you've got, I'm going to flip to this so I can read those bottom numbers. I apologize. Throughout the state, we're talking over 700,000, almost 800,000 service points for natural gas. The mileage is, these are not thousands, right, Al? These are straight numbers, so it's 949 miles of transmission pipeline and 16,882 miles of distribution pipeline throughout the state. So there's plenty to inspect physically and also to monitor records of. We're somewhat blessed, I think, in that much of the system is fairly new and we don't face a lot of the problems that some other places do with outdated materials having been used in construction as well. Questar has been active in replacing a lot of their lines and pretty aggressive with that replacement. So. I don't have a lot of insight or things to add. I know the question is whether or not the regulation is adequate, and I'm a lawyer, so I'll say it depends if I have to give an answer, which I don't really have to do. But I think that we have a good system in place, a good system of inspection, and while there certainly have been accidents through the years, proper location services and excavating practices would cut those out by and large. So I don't know if we're doing questions at the end or whatever. I'm happy to take whatever questions you have and then punt them back to Al Zadeh because he knows the answers. But don't hesitate to call us if you have any needs or interest in either learning more information or informing the process as we go about fulfilling our duty to inspect these pipelines. Thanks.